Did people have ensuite toilets in Anglo-Saxon England? Yes, but only if you were rich and powerful. And now, fresh archaeological research suggests that an 11th century toilet discovered a few years ago may have belonged to none other than King Harold II himself. I'm here in Bosham. It's a very nice place on the south coast of England. It's kind of relaxed, not too busy, a nice place to hang out. Back in the 11th century, it was probably a lot more lively, certainly when one of the leading men in the land was in town. And we know that Harold Godwinson, the Earl of Wessex, who went on to become King Harold II of England, had a place here and visited it because it's shown in the Bear Tapestry. King Harold, of course, was crowned at the start of 1066, and the tapestry shows the drama of that year, which ended with the Norman Duke William defeating him at the Battle of Hastings and claiming the crown for himself. Let's take a look at the tapestry. Here's Harold riding into Bosham with a hunting hawk on his hand. Then he feasts in a grand hall, swigging with his men from big drinking horns. And then he hitches up his trousers and heads off on a sailing trip carrying a dog under his arm. So, Harold clearly had a good time here, carousing in what you imagine was a big night of serious consumption. And we know he would have been the host of that party because Bosham was one of Harold's chief seats and the site of his harbour, private fleet, and probably a deer park as well. But until recently, we didn't know too much about the nature of his lordly complex or palace here. The manor house in the village today is much later in date, but in 2006 part of its grounds were excavated, and among other things, a late Saxon latrine was found. And now researchers for a project called Where Power Lies have surveyed the site again and found more evidence for an enclosure and buildings here at the time of the Norman conquest. I spoke to Dr. Duncan Wright from that Where Power Lies research team, and he told me why the latrine suddenly became important in the light of their work. Since those excavations were carried out in 2006, it's been shown by academics that you only get integrated toilets like this with really high status Anglo-Saxon houses. And these sorts of houses were generally associated with churches. The church here, by the manor house in Bosham, has elements that date to the 11th century. So armed with that knowledge, the team are very confident that the latrine found here must have been attached to a very high status hall. And that can only be Earl Harold's hall because this was his manor. If this was Harold's house, then it was likely his toilet. Did he use it? Well, we can't say for sure. But if he was drinking and feasting as hard as he's shown in the Bear Tapestry, then he's going to have needed to use the facilities at some point. You do the math. Can you come here and sit on that royal throne now? Sadly not. The manor house is a private dwelling, but Bosham is happily possessed of some very fine public toilets, so you won't be caught short if you come here to consider the life and times and personal business of King Harold II. By the way, you can read the full survey report from the Where Power Lies team in an open access article in the Antiquaries Journal. We'll put a link in the comments. If you want to know more about the Bear Tapestry, have a listen to my 5-part History Extra podcast series all about it. And if you want to know more about the history of toilets, I've done another